Hi everybody, this is Colin Murphy and welcome to Torcana Podcast 26. We have a very experienced guest for you on the show today and I really think you're going to enjoy his insights into achieving financial freedom. His name is MC Laubscher and he's the president and CEO of Valhalla Wealth Financial, and he's also the host of a popular business investing podcast called Cashflow Ninja, which a lot of you might know about. His mission is to help as many people as possible eliminate the control banks and financial institutions have over their lives by building their wealth in a variety of ways outside of Wall Street. MC, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on, Colin. It's great to chat again.
Oh, our pleasure. Our pleasure. So can you tell our listeners a little more about yourself and your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, I have a podcast called the Cashflow Ninja, where we have guests on sharing how they create income streams in this new economy and in this information age. So we kind of look at everything from real estate, businesses, online businesses, affiliate marketing and so forth, commodities from coffee farms to gold, how to cash flow gold and silver, paper assets. A lot of people, there's the share strategies of how to create income streams from the markets, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and then also insurance products, and then also digital assets. The crypto space is obviously becoming more mainstream, Bitcoin especially. So there's a lot of folks doing really, really well and creating income streams in that niche. And then I'm also the president and founder of Valhalla Wealth Financial. We help people build their wealth outside of Wall Street. So it's a little bit of a contrarian take on things of how we focus around strategies, giving our clients control over their cash flow and over their assets and money and building it outside of the Wall Street casino.
Wow, fascinating. There's a lot of stuff we can dig into during the show here, but can we just start back? I mean, why do you think so many people struggle financially these days? I mean, there's obviously more choice than ever. The economy is doing okay, but the crisis just seemed to knock so many people out of sync, and I think a lot of people are struggling to get back into the groove again. Why do you think so many people are struggling in 2017? What's the reason?
Yeah, that's a great question. And if you look at the statistics, and I mean, we could do an entire podcast just on that. It's actually quite brutal of what the majority of people are experiencing and how they're struggling financially. One quick statistic is that most American families, I think it's over 70%, can't really come up with $400 for an emergency right now.
Wow.
So they have to put it on a credit card, or they have to sell something. So people are really struggling financially and out there. And as you mentioned, in 2017, there's so much information out there. So what is it why do people struggle? And the first thing that I will say, there's a couple of reasons, but there was a major shift that happened economically in the globe. And within the last couple of years, we went from a jobs economy to a skill and a U economy. It's a gigantic shift, which I don't think people have quite understand that yet. And that ties into the reason number one, the outdated education model that we have. Mm-hmm. Schools do not prepare people for the economy or how to handle their finances. You know, it's the Prussian school model, which was designed to deliver patriotic soldiers and factory workers, right? We still have bells ringing in the schools telling people when they can eat lunch and all that kind of stuff. And this was all part of the programming. And it's so outdated at the moment that there's really truly no skill sets being taught in schools for people to succeed outside in this new you and skills economy that we've moved into. And to tie into that, there's no financial education taught in any schools.
Right.
So zero. And then afterwards, there's no financial education. So no, and not in the schools, not in universities, not in colleges. When we go, when people start their first job, their financial advisor is their HR person, telling them, which mutual funds to invest in. And a lot of people ask me, well, MC, what is financial education? You say there's a lack of financial education. Well, a good place to start is, it's an ongoing thing of learning different things of what you're interested in within finance and financial management and wealth management. Mm-hmm. But just a quick couple of things is, financial education is going to educate you on what is an asset versus a liability.
Right.
What is good debt versus bad debt? What is savings as opposed to investment and speculation? There's a huge difference between that, and that's one of the big issues. What is money and how does it work? What's money? What's a fiat currency? And what's a currency? How has the money system through the last 100 years changed? Those are very good foundational blocks for financial education, because that helps you understand how money works, and then also how money flows, and especially right now. The third reason is we're outsourcing financial and wealth management, which we should keep in-house. People right now just hand over their money to someone else and hope that it's going to be there in 30, 35 years, 40 years. This is a skill that, this is your life, right?
Yeah.
This determines how you're going to live, how you're going to live forward, live out your golden years. Money determines so many things in your life: the quality of your life, your health, the education that your children are going to receive, the experiences that you're going to have in life. And we just outsource this completely. And Colin, there are skills that, you should outsource. If I have a toothache and I need a filling in my tooth, I'm not going to attempt to pull it or to put a filling into my tooth. But finance and wealth management isn't pulling a tooth. It's something that's cardinal that every single person should be empowered to be able to do. And then, the second last reason is just to tie into the financial education, but the current model, I won't call it traditional, or maybe I'll call it conventional, but it's really set up to fail. The way that people plan these days, the mindset that's out there, you're setting yourself up to fail right away. We save for this current model for 30 to 35 years to 40 years and just focus on accumulation, on accumulating money. There's no focus on cash flow, right, or income streams. And then a funny thing happens when we're, 60, 65, 70, at what age we're going to retire. Now, all of a sudden, we want to focus on cash flow and the income that we're going to need to live. So, looking at this model, it's like, well, I don't understand how do you, what amount of money do you need to live out your years? We're going to live longer, right, too.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What are you going to need to sustain your lifestyle? And how do you, it's something's missing here. How do you not plan for the amount of cash flow that you're going to need? You've got this accumulation model, which a lot of people do, and then they hope and pray that they're going to be able to convert that into cash flow, which a lot of people right now are figuring out is not that easy. And there's no feedback loop in that model as well. You and I can have to save for 30 to 35 to 40 years in that model, and then we'll figure out if we had it right. Oh, we did save enough money. Exactly, where cash flow and investing for cash flow and focusing on cash flow has an immediate feedback mechanism. So if I'm investing in something or directing my money into a vehicle that needs to provide cash flow, I'm going to know within the first month or maybe, latest 2 months that this works or this doesn't work, and I can make adjustments to do that. And then the final reason why I think a lot of people are struggling, I've mentioned that we haven't adjusted to the environment where we moved from a jobs economy to a and a skilled economy, is our environment. We have a very, very turbulent times. You and I were chatting beforehand. The United States was hit, unfortunately, with a lot of devastating storms. There's a lot of financial storms as well on the horizon. If you just look at our current environment of what we live in, just in the United States, and this isn't just specific to the United States. This is all countries in the world. But using the U.S. as an example, you and I live here. We're over $20 trillion in debt. If you look at the unfunded liabilities, there's a usdebtclock.org is something that you could go on. Mm-hmm. It's quite depressing, actually, the first couple of minutes when you read into it. But there's over $100 trillion in unfunded liabilities, which is Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, which are all bankrupt. We have a growing welfare state in the U.S., which is completely underfunded. And this is just the government programs. That we haven't even gotten into the pension side of it, which is a complete mess. There's a massive storm coming with pensions. And then to tie into this, the demographic tidal wave, which is hitting the globe, is the baby boomers going into their golden years. In the U.S., there's 76 million of them. And these are folks that are now going to withdraw resources from asset classes to live on and live out their golden years. And unfortunately, as we mentioned, there's a lot of people of them struggling, which will be putting more pressure on the existing infrastructure, such as Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, which is already underfunded. So it's a very turbulent environment, which is very, very key if you want to build wealth in the next 10 years, in the next 20 years, in the next 30 years. You have to understand the environment that you operate in and how to navigate these stormy waters ahead of us.
Okay, so, and I completely agree with you, and I'd love it if people just started teaching kids about managing their money at an early age, and they had some sort of habit about how to manage their money and how to take care of things and make sure they have enough money to get by, and never too young to start. I'm already starting to talk to my kids who are 5 and 7 about how to manage their money and encourage them to think about it. And if we did that, it would probably, help a lot of people avoid problems that they encounter when they're in their 20s and 30s. So obviously accumulating wealth is important. Accumulating cash flow is crucial. There seems to be a lot of threats that you mentioned there, a lot of these storms coming, a lot of these underfunded government programs and debt. How can people accumulate enough cash flow and wealth while avoiding and protecting themselves from all these huge threats that could be hitting us in 5, 10, 20 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've mentioned the environment, and then the wealth destroyers, which is the biggest ones that are out there, is taxes, bar none. I think Zero Hedge did an article in 2015 that the average person in the U.S. pays over 97 different types of taxes.
Okay.
And in one way or another, right? Whether it's sales tax or any of that kind of stuff, which is quite depressing. But this is the biggest wealth destroyer that's out there. Then we have fees and commissions, for Wall Street. John Bogle from the Vanguard Group, he's here in Pennsylvania with his company is here in Pennsylvania where I live. Mm-hmm. And they did a study where just with compound interest, which is a word that's thrown around to a lot of folks. And trust me, again, I love compound interest, but as Robert Kiyosaki teaches, there's 3 sides of a coin: heads, tails, and the edge. Compound interest is great, but compound interest also compounds the taxes in your money, as well as the fees and commissions. So much so that fees and commissions could eat away 2/3 of your gains over 30 to 40 years when it's in there. That's another huge one. Inflation is the silent tax, they call it, which is also a big threat. Mm-hmm. We've covered the environment. How can people position themselves to build wealth? The first thing is they have to position their assets adequately in what's going on, aligned with what's going on in the environment. What I mean by that is, so for instance, if you position your assets in such a way where it is as tax efficient as possible, mm-hmm. it limits and reduces taxes, and it is also treated tax favorably, which you know a lot about real estate in that regard. That's one way already where you're combating these wealth destroyers. You're combating taxes, you're combating the fees and commissions because you have more control over that, and you're combating inflation. Real estate, for instance, you can raise the rents the cost of living goes up. And you also, the other thing that I would say is you have to try and limit and control, not control, but limit and reduce the impact of uncontrollable variables. Taxes is an enormous uncontrollable variable. So our philosophy and what we teach too is we pay taxes on the seed, not the harvest. And we pay all the taxes that are legally due to Uncle Sam, but we don't have to leave him a tip, right? Okay. So we lock that in and we don't push it forward. So again, if you look at the current system, we defer taxes under current financial planning to 30 to 40 years out, and then we pay taxes at that stage. Well, we have no idea what taxes is going to be down the line. We can guess, but we're not soothsayers. So why would we have a financial plan that has that unknown and uncontrollable variable left wide open? So the first thing that I will say is, number one is, again, positioning of your assets to combat all these wealth destroyers. Continue to invest in your financial education and focusing on cash flow, not accumulation. And I'll give you an example. I had a property during the last financial crisis. I was invested in real estate, but I was focused on cash flow. I didn't buy the property and hope that it was going to go up in value to be sold at a later time. So when the value of my property at that stage fell probably 30%, around about there, I didn't bat an eyelid or I didn't panic, because I was still, every month, I was still getting my cash flow in from that property. So, with storms brewing and a crisis may come down here or there, I mean, it's kind of baked into the cake. Nobody knows when it's going to happen. But and if it does, if you focused on cash flow, you're going to be much better off than accumulation and hoping and pray. So that's a huge thing. I joke around and say it's like the story of the golden goose, where people that are focusing on accumulation of money and just saving feed the goose. They keep the goose nice and healthy, and 30 to 35, 40 years down the line, they slaughter the goose and they eat it. Well, the problem is you're going to run out of that goose and meat of that goose to feed yourself. Where if you focused on the golden eggs and keep the goose nice and healthy, and collect the eggs and have many, many geese, you're going to be so much better off. So I think those are just some ways of navigating the stormy waters. People throw in a lot of diversification. That's a word that we hear and hear and hear. Sure. That's not necessarily, there's a time and a place for certain things, but especially in the beginning when you're set out, learn one specific area, become a master in that, dominate that, and create income streams from that area before you start looking at other asset classes to invest in. Warren Buffett is a pretty good example, where he sticks to what he knows. He sticks to paper, but it's electricity, it's railroads, it's insurance, it's commodities like Coca-Cola. He didn't jump into Facebook or any of that kind of stuff. So
yeah.
I would, and especially, knowing your area of expertise better than anybody else, you're going to be able to know how to manage your position with risk management strategies when there are stormy waters ahead.
Okay. Fascinating. Really fascinating. So, I've always believed that building wealth takes time, that you plan it out carefully. I've never been a fan of get rich quick. It's kind of, for me, get rich slow, get rich methodically over time. But I believe you've got some strategies that can help people to accelerate this process, to accelerate their wealth building. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah. So the first thing, if you're listening to this and you're set out to building wealth, you have to set some time aside and really, really understand what is it that you want to do, which I don't think a lot of people do. They just kind of want to do what everybody else is doing, or, they kind of think that they want one thing. But you really have to be very, very clear and have clarity. What is it that you want in life? What does your health look like? What does your finances look like? What does your relationship look like? And what does your life look like, right? Because this is extremely important, because if you're not clear about that, you're not going to be wealthy in the sense that I described wealthy, or build wealth, because you're going to create a prison for yourself, which a lot of people have done. So you have to be very, very clear of what is it that you want. And then you have to be very clear why it matters. And what is your why to have that? Without a strong why, that is probably the most important thing that's going to keep you going.
It's hard to stay motivated without it, right? Because it's not easy.
Exactly. Because it's not easy. Otherwise, everybody would be doing it, right?
Yeah.
And then the third thing is then, who do you need to become to be able to do that? Which is a key question to ask yourself, because every single year you can ask the same question of yourself when you review your goals. And trust me, it's kind of scary when I look at it too in the beginning of the year and I said, these are my goals for the year. All right, who do I need to become to hit that? And then I do a quick inventory of myself, and I'm like, oh boy, well, I need this skill, I need that skill. I don't know how to do this, so I have to bring in someone to help me. And that ties into the second part of it. The two strategies to solve any problem, basically, that I learned from a mentor of mine is the first thing is it skills that you can acquire and learn to be able to implement and execute it? So, for instance, can I invest in, do I understand how to invest in real estate properties? Do I understand real estate markets? Do I understand real estate trends? Yeah, I can learn these skills. These are skills that I can learn. When it comes to other parts of your goal, if I have to formulate my tax strategy, Colin, those are not skills that I know or can learn in a year, right? So I'm going to bring in a tax expert. And so along those lines, I figured the first thing is what can I learn to tackle this challenge and accomplish this goal? And the second thing is, if I can't learn it, who can I bring in to help me accomplish this and be part of my team? I'm still the leader. I'm still in control of my life, but I'm bringing in these folks to help me accomplish my goal. And as you mentioned, this is obviously not a get-rich-quick solution. This takes a little bit of a while, and this is also almost like a dating game. You're not going to have all of your advisors on the page, the same page, knowing what each one knowing what the other one's doing immediately. This is going to take a little bit of work, but it's very, very important, especially to have that. And then once you have that settled, and you figured out exactly, okay, how much cash flow do I need? And this is also, a great number where you can set a target for yourself. So I usually take this number. One of the things that I look at that I learned from a mentor too is take, for instance, a number of the money that you wish to save and still invest. Because, trust me, this is going to be fun after a while. You're not going to want to stop once you become successful. It becomes like a game. This is something that you'll do for the rest of your life. So if you, for instance, want $10,000 a month put aside of investing, you take that and you add up, well, what's your living expenses right now? Let's just say it's $5,000. Well, that's $15,000 between the money that you want to still continue to use to invest and, your living expenses. And you could, in the end, invest a little bit less, sure. And use it however you want at that point. But let's just say for this year, and then you times it by 1.45. So if I do $15,000 times 1.45, so your income goal is around $21,750. So $21,750.
And you're doing that because that's the tax you're going to have to pay in the 21 to get down to your net 15. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's also there. So there's kind of tax factored in there for you too. So now we've got a nice round number that we can chase. So now we have a number, and then we can work out too the financial freedom formula. Basically, if you take, let's just make it a $20,000 a month, right? If you take $20,000 per month and you take that to 12 months, that's $240,000 per year that we're going to look at. Then we've got to try and find what is a doable return for you to understand eventually how we have to accumulate and scale our money to get there. So, for instance, we could do that. Let's just say we do if we do a 12% return at that stage, that's $2 million. So that's about the money that you're going to need eventually, and this is just a quick round number,
sure.
Back to, of investable assets along that to get that. Now, there's quicker ways to get that, and we'll get to that in a second. But once we have our number established of what we want on a monthly cash flow number, we can create processes and systems with the team that we have in place. So, for instance, if we have, for instance, we're going to bring in a tax specialist, obviously. We're going to get maybe a coach, a real estate coach. We're going to bring in real estate partners. We're going to bring in asset protection attorneys. We're going to bring in a life insurance specialist. We're going to bring in different type of folks to help us achieve this. And once you build and create that system, now we have systems and processes that are in place, basically ready to go, because you have to, as you know, Colin, you have to systematize this process, and now we can achieve that goal by breaking it down that way. So don't just write the goal down and wish of how you're going to try and get there. Putting it into action is creating a battle plan for yourself, weekly, monthly, yearly, of then how to get to that number. And it's all math. I mean, there's a science behind this, and an art of how to achieve financial freedom. But these are just some of the things that we teach of how to build sustainable wealth. There's other things that we bring in too that I can touch on if you wanted me to. But this is just basically a 30,000 feet overview of what we do.
Okay, no, I think it makes a lot of sense. I like that. Set goals, find out your why, find out how much you actually need, decide what skills you need to get to them, or where you need to bring in outside help. That's very good advice, and it's something people can get started at any time, and something they should get started at. And so at the top of the show, I remember you kind of mentioned almost a bewildering array of financial products that you're involved in, and ways people can invest. I mean, does real estate have an important role to play in helping people achieve financial freedom? Is that something that you talk to people a lot, as well as the stocks and bonds and new digital currencies and so on? Is real estate a big deal for people that want to do this?
Absolutely. It's a very, very big vehicle of choice. The wealthiest families in the world have invested in real estate for ages, and a great asset class to do that. I mean, real estate ticks a ton of boxes. Cash flow, obviously, right at the top. There's a ton of tax advantages. There's the equity buildup inside of them, the appreciation, the inflation hedge of being able to raise rents along with the cost of living, and then also controlled leverage. The other thing that I just wanted to mention too, Colin, is the big thing that we teach as well, which is kind of like the part two, is how do you collapse time in your financial plan and get 35 to 40 years of results in 10 years or less. Real estate plays a very big part of how we help our clients do that, and we combine that with actually an asset class that a lot of people don't know very much about, and I didn't either until I got really involved in this a decade ago, but high cash value life insurance. So we combo the two of those, because the high cash value life insurance also has cash flow, liquidity, tax advantages, equity appreciation, controlled leverage, and is also an inflation hedge. I mentioned liquidity, and that's why it ties so great with real estate, because it provides the liquidity we need to invest the real estate. And it also, like both these vehicles, capture, quote unquote, your wealth for you in these vehicles. So with real estate, for instance, you can invest in a property. You can force appreciation through different strategies or get appreciation. Then you can cash some money out through a refi, and then roll it into a next property. So what you've essentially done is you've captured a lot of wealth in there, and then through controlled leverage that money that you've captured in that house or that property, and rolled it into the next one. So you can do the same thing with insurance. And when we dovetail these two together, and that's, some of your listeners might have heard of the infinite banking concept. It kind of becomes an infinite flow of cash between the two vehicles, and between the two of them, you are as tax favorably positioned as you possibly could be, and through combating the wealth destroyers, setting ourselves in this favorable position, tax-wise, inflation-wise, cash flow-wise, we can reduce the financial results of about 30 to 40 years in 10 years or less, and help people achieve financial freedom in that time frame. But real estate is an asset that's not going to go away. The trends are extremely favorable for real estate. We have a millennial generation, which is bigger than the baby boomer generation, coming through right now. They are not home buyers. They're looking to rent. We've talked about that we've moved from a jobs economy to a skilled and a U economy, which is a huge, huge trend, because in the old days, people would get a job. They would stay in an area for 20 to 30 to 40 years, right? Buy that property, raise their families there, go to the schools. In this new economy, the skilled economy, mobility is key, so people are going to move around a lot. Millennials are going to move around a lot. Even Gen Y and Gen X is already, there's a lot of them doing that already. So from a renting perspective, there's going to be a ton of renters looking for properties, and this is all very, very favorable for real estate investors.
I couldn't agree more, and I think you've given a fantastic summary of the benefits of investing in real estate and how it can help people grow some very serious wealth in a reasonably short period of time. And you're right that the millennials are a massive, almost an unprecedented opportunity for real estate investors, in that they present almost unlimited rental demand, because the majority of new households being created now, the millennial households, the vast majority of them are renters, and if you can latch on to areas where you can deliver quality rental properties, you will rent these to millennials and lots of other demographic groups for years and years and years and years, and you have opportunities for rental income that previous generations just didn't have, because demand is just going to be so high. They're not building anywhere near enough supply to cope with at the moment. So if you can deliver a quality rental product, or if you can work with people that deliver quality rental properties, you have an enormous opportunity. I mean, I know real estate is only one of the things you're involved in, MC. Do you have any specific types of real estate that you recommend people look at or recommend people invest in?
Yeah, so this is a great question, and this ties into it's something that I mentioned a little bit earlier, that there's an art and a science to financial freedom. So the science kind of is like the math of how to break it down and getting the hard numbers. The art of how to do that with cash flow is pertaining to the specific individual, because we all have different interests, we all have different skill sets, we all have different personalities. We all have different things. So I would say that, that's one area where there are a ton of different real estate vehicles out there. And I think that this is one thing that individuals should take a look at and see what areas are they interested in exploring. And again, as I said previously, you can start in one area and really, really get to expand your knowledge base in that area, and eventually that might look into turning your portfolio into and invest into other areas. So, for instance, you can start into single family, dominate single family, know exactly how that is, get your cash flow from there, understand real estate. It's a very, very very good way to get started in that, and then eventually you can look at different other areas, right? Self-storage, mobile home parks, real estate syndications, all that kind of stuff, because once you understand the one area and learn it, you're going to be able to transfer that over to other areas in real estate. But I would say that it's specific to the individual, focus in the one area, and then look at some of the other classes as well.
Awesome. Thanks a million. So, yeah, this is really motivational stuff. This is, a lot of actionable information that we're getting here. I feel that sometimes for a lot of people, the hardest part is just getting started. Once you're on a path and you can see where it's leading, you can really accelerate. But what advice do you have for people that might be kind of stuck in a rut and just can't seem to find time to get things moving in the direction they want to go? They can't really seem to get started or find out what that new path is. I'm kind of particularly thinking of families that might have kind of tough, demanding jobs, or maybe they've got small kids and they're just kind of exhausted, just getting through the day and just doing the minimum possible. How can these kinds of people find the time and the energy and the motivation to get started on this path? How can they do it?
Yeah, I would say, and I understand people's lives are very, very busy, but it all comes down to, again, as we spoke about, the why and why you want to achieve or do something. So I would say, and once you've established that, I would say find at least, if it's an hour a day, 30 minutes a day, to a time for yourself to think, because that's one thing we don't do enough of right now. We're always running from the one thing to the next thing. We've got a million distractions, whether it's smartphones or whether it's the radio, whether it's the TV. But find about an hour, if you can carve it out in the morning, if you've got a family, maybe it's an hour that you go in earlier to work. And on the way to work, you can turn literally any place into a library or into a classroom these days.
That's true.
You can listen to podcasts just such as this one. You can listen to books on Audible. Get to work maybe an hour early. Spend that hour investing in yourself, whether it's sitting down and carving out exactly determining what you want in life, what you want to do. Because if you don't know where you're going, any road will do, like Alice in Wonderland would say. So you have to understand exactly what you want. And once you figure that out, as we mentioned, some of the other strategies, then you can start to use that as kind of like a power hour. And you'll get excited about it once you've established that, to learn skill sets, to invest in yourself, to do different things. So at least an hour a day, and on the weekend too, just carve out an hour for yourself. We find a way to walk or to go to the gym or something like that when we want to lose weight. We should do the same thing for the wealth of our family, because this is going to impact everything. And that's why, a lot of people are always saying, well, it's not just about money. And absolutely, money is just a medium of exchange and a representation of value, but it does impact the quality of life you have, the experiences that you enjoy along life, and the ability to help other people, which is what we are ultimately here for.
Okay. No, that's absolutely true. I couldn't agree more with you. So you're fortunate enough. You've interviewed and you've interacted with a lot of successful people in your line of work. I mean, what are there any key traits and habits you've observed that seem to separate these successful people from the pack, from the regular guys?
Yeah, so there's a couple that I've identified. The first thing, and we've spoken about mindset. They definitely have the mindset of abundance. They know the universal law of value and income, as Bob Burke tells in his books, The Go-Giver. They know that the amount of people that they go out and serve and provide value for, that value is going to flow back into their life. So they know if they want more value in their life, in what shape or form it might be, whether it's monetary, whether it's relationships, they know they have to go out and produce more value for others. And that's kind of ties into the abundance mindset. And we just spoke about how people can get started. One of the biggest enemies of the abundance mindset is comfort and getting out of our comfort zones where we grow. So mindset is a huge one, which, of course I was going to say that it sounds like kind of like, yeah, it's definitely the way that people think, but it's so powerful, because if you don't have that, none of the other stuff really matters. The second thing is they have a plan. They have a vision and a plan, and they build out a roadmap, as you and I discussed. The third one is the network and their team. They know that their net worth equals their network. There's also a different way that they network. These folks don't go into networks and figure out what's in it for them. They try to figure out how to help other people in that network and how to become the influencer in that network, because they understand, again, the law of value, that the person that provides the most value within that network is going to be the most sought after individual, number one. But that's the most powerful person in that network. And I've seen it firsthand, with influencers of how they introduce people and connect people. Those people are extremely powerful. So find out how you can add value to a network. Build that team. If you can't bring it in-house or learn that skill set, bring someone in that can help you. They're still part of your team. And then wealth capture. They know how to capture their wealth. Either through insurance vehicles, as I've discussed, or real estate. Two of the most powerful vehicles, how you can do that. They understand wealth strategies and have people help them educate that. There's so many different ways to invest in things. Robert Kiyosaki talks about, you can invest in real estate as a poor and a middle class person or as a rich person. So true. One person can lose a ton of money in real estate on a property. Another person can take it over, and it can be a very, very valuable income property for him. So While strategies is extremely important, and then the giving part is just giving back to the world, giving back to their communities, giving back to the respective peer groups that they're in, and they start right away. And that's something people can do regardless of where they are in life. They can start with that right away. It doesn't need to be money. For these folks, especially the very wealthy folks, it's not a question of money anymore. That's not the most important thing to them. It's time.
Sure.
And they donate their time. So, all of us have a certain amount of hours during the day. If we don't have the money or the resources initially, we can donate our time and give it back that way.
Okay, thank you. This is a really great show, MC. I'm loving it. So finally, I mean, I'd like to end these shows on a lighter note. Do you have any funny stories, or what's the craziest or funniest thing that happened to you or one of your clients during the course of your work? Have you seen anything strange that you can give us a little anecdote about?
That's a good question. So I think back in my real estate days, I have a ton of stories that I can probably write a book on. But yeah, I mean, right now with my clients, I have to say that I learn a lot from my clients too, because this has been kind of very, very fulfilling for me, because we teach certain strategies and we have strategies in place. Mm-hmm. And then it's been just kind of interesting how, as my clients start understanding what we're doing too, and what you can do with some of the vehicles that we combine, I get a phone call once a week and, say, hey, I just did X, Y, and Z. And I mean, that's one of the most pleasing experiences. So, I learn a lot from them every day. So a specific story I can't touch on, but I will say this: it's been a pleasure learning from other folks too, and especially my clients, and seeing how they utilize a ton of these strategies out there.
I'll bet. No, I can see what you mean, that you kind of show people certain methods and kind of, teach them, give them the ingredients, and they can come up with something very original or very different, and you're like, wow, I never would have thought of that, but okay, I can see how that might work for you. Well done.
Yeah, absolutely. What did they say? Someone said the one time to me, if you truly want to learn more about a topic or a subject too, is go and teach it, right? Mm-hmm. And it's so funny because we help folks with these strategies, and then we learn as we go along, through the years. There's someone that comes up and say, hey, I just use it this way. This was fantastic. And I'm like, that's amazing. So then we just kind of add that to another success story.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. That's the way to do it. And I can see how teaching will enable you to learn a lot more than you ever would have just studying it yourself. So thanks very much for this, MC. This has been a great show. So how can people get in touch with you if they want to talk to you, if they want to learn more about your podcast or your company? How can they do it?
Yeah, so my podcast is cashflowninja.com. As I mentioned, we have a ton of people on there talking about different ways to create income streams. We cover quite a array of topics and asset classes. And then for folks that are interested in learning some of the strategies that we teach, there's actually a free webinar that I put on. They could go to cashflowninja.com/be-the-bank. That webinar will show you a ton of the different strategies that I talk about, using, for instance, the high cash value life insurance and real estate combination, and others. I talk about wealth formulas, how to set these goals for yourself, and more. So yeah, cashflowninja.com is a good place to start, and cashflowninja.com/be-the-bank if anyone's interested in learning more information.
Okay, I'll make sure I put both those in our show notes. Okay, and if people want to go to them, they're great documents. I recommend you reading them. So that's it. I'm going to wrap up the show, MC. Thanks a million for coming on. Let's chat again soon.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on, Colin. This was a blast.
All right, my pleasure. All right, so there you have it, folks. That was Torcana Podcast 26 with MC Laubscher. I really enjoyed this one. It was great to take a step back and do a general podcast about wealth building and goal setting, thinking about the risks that are out there and the opportunities that are out there, and how real estate can play an important part of that. MC's a very interesting guy. I like what he does. His podcast is very interesting, Cashflow Ninja. his company, how he helps people grow wealth and accelerate the process by having very clearly defined goals and what you want is very interesting. He's a good guy to know. If you're wondering about his accent, he's originally from South Africa, but he's been living in the US for a long time, and I really enjoy his unique take on things and his point of view. So I hope you enjoy that. I hope you get a little something out of it, and that if you've been struggling to find time to set aside, that you might make that extra effort, like MC said, to set aside an hour, whether it's early in the morning or the evening, just to set goals, find out your why, what will motivate you to battle through this, and build that wealth and set those goals, and have a think about what skills you're going to need to accomplish and what areas you need to bring in outside help to achieve. You'd be amazed at what you can accomplish once you have clear ideas about what you want to do, and you'd be amazed at how many people are out there willing to help you to do it. So thanks again for listening. Appreciate your support. If any of you can leave us a review on iTunes or whatever device you listen to it, that would be really helpful. That helps us move up the rankings and get new listeners. So thanks again. This is Colin Murphy from Torcana.com signing out. I'll be back again soon with Torcana Podcast 27. This recording contains general information relating to the real estate market, and it is for educational purposes only. Buyers should always seek appropriate legal, tax, and financial advice from suitably qualified professionals before entering into any real estate transaction. Actual returns from rental properties will always vary from person to person and deal to deal based on unique circumstances. While we have no reason to doubt the validity of comments of any guests on our show, we do not warrant their accuracy. Opinions of the host are not necessarily shared by other employees and partners of Torcana and its subsidiaries.